The ideas expressed in City Club forums are those of the speakers and not of the City Club of Cleveland, IdeaStream Public Media, or their sponsors. Production and distribution of City Club forums on IdeaStream Public Media are made possible by PNC and the United Black Fund of Greater Cleveland, Incorporated.
Good afternoon, City Club members, students, educators, and community members joining us today. Welcome to the City Club of Cleveland. My name is Aria Bindra, and I'm a junior at Brexville-Broadview Heights High School and a member of the City Club's Youth Forum Council. Today, we are here to discuss youth activism, how students can create change. Our conversation today will focus on the power and purpose of youth activism. Across generations, young people have been at the forefront of social and political change, and today's students are no exception. From speaking out on campuses to organizing in their communities, their voices continue to shape the future. Yet, as calls for change grow louder, so do our efforts to silence them. Our guests today are Jonah Pichette, government educator and advisor at Brexville-Broadview Heights High School and community leader, and Maya Smith, director of early career programs, Cleveland Leadership Center. Moderating today's conversation is your Youth Forum Council VP of Communications, Shashini Mohan, a student at Brexville-Broadview Heights High School. Together, we'll discuss ways to support and strengthen youth leadership, equipping students with tools, confidence, and platforms they need to turn passion into impact. Thank you all for joining us in this essential conversation.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shashini Mohan, and I'm a senior at Brexville-Broadview Heights High School, and I am so honored to be your moderator for today's Youth Forum on Youth Activism. Now, right now, students across the country are witnessing changes, whether that be in their rights or policies, that affect our lives daily. But what's even more powerful is the way that we have been responding. From school walkouts to online organizations, young people are finding new ways to create change. And that's what today's conversation is all about, exploring how our generation is shaping the future through activism. Joining me today are two amazing panelists, Jonah Pichette and Maya Smith, who are both leaders in their own communities by giving voices to others, and especially students. But before we get started, I want to ask the students here, raise your hand if you even feel fully equipped to voice your own opinions on a day-to-day basis. That's not a lot of you, but hopefully by the end of our discussion today, we will all walk out with new ideas, inspirations, or even just something to make a little small change in our own communities. And with that, panelists, why don't we get started and go ahead and tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you do.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us. This is an honor and a privilege. My name is Jonah Pichette. I'm a teacher at Brexville-Broadview Heights High School, where I teach government and psychology. I am also a lifelong Northeast Ohioan. I was born and raised here, and I love it here. I am currently living in my forever city of Twinsburg, Ohio, where I serve as the chair of the city's Environmental Commission and run a nonprofit charity, the Twinsburg Charitable Fund. I'm beyond honored again to be here, and I'm really excited to have this forum. So thank you for having me.
Thank you for having me. Good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Maya Smith, Director of Early Career Programs at the Cleveland Leadership Center. I spent most of my career in youth development and out-of-school time programming, where I am a mentor to many students. I am half raised in Selma, Alabama. I moved to Cleveland, Ohio when I was an adolescent. And from that point on, I have been involved in programs that help youth expand their voices and make sure that they're change makers in this community. So I'm really excited to be here today and to meet all of you.
So let's start with our first question. What does youth activism even look like when it's effective? Would you like to start?
I could start, sure, yeah. So I think youth activism, it looks a little bit different for everybody, but when it's effective, it has to be something. Youth activism could be a lot of different things. You know, it doesn't have to be you going to a city council meeting or the state house and speaking out. Youth activism could be you advocating for a club in your school. Youth activism could be you advocating for a change to school policy, or even advocating for something in just your school district. It's something small. But it's you saying, hey, I really believe in this cause. I would like to stand up and make this change happen. Youth activism is you saying, I could be a part of the solution, and really taking the action steps to make that happen.
And to piggyback off of him, I will also say just it is different for everyone, but I think it looks like passion. It looks like what do you value to get involved, to be not a product of policy, but someone who wants to see and be the change. If you see something that you think can be done better, or that you think you have the idea to make it better, that's you putting yourself out there to really capitalize on things that you're good at, but also the opportunity for you to try something different. Just because you're good at it, it doesn't mean you can't be holistic and be good at something else. So youth activism, what I've seen is just getting out of your comfort zone and making sure you're a part of the change that you see every day in the Cleveland community or wherever you live, if it's not in the immediate city itself.
Can you guys actually give us more examples on specific students that you may know in your communities that you work with that have effectively engaged students with youth activism?
Absolutely. So I'm the advisor to student government as well, on top of the many different things I do. And inside of student government, we have essentially 2 different branches of government. It's a really cool opportunity for students to engage and step up in leadership roles. Last year, I'll use an example from last year, but I had a student who came to me and said, hey, Mr. Pichette, I think it'd be really cool if we could have a drive-in movie fundraiser here at the school. It would help our club, it would help a couple other clubs out. I think this would be a fantastic opportunity. I can tell you that that is not something that most schools do. And I said, sure, let's figure out how we make this happen, but I need you to take the lead on this. This was your idea, and I'm here to facilitate and advise you to success. And so this student, he came back to me the next day and he said, all right, I figured it out. I've got the licensing. I've gotten a company to donate the big screen for us. I've partnered with 3 other clubs to help make sure this event happens. And I just need you to go get the final approval as my advisor and make sure that it will, be the successful event I know it could be. That continues year after year. I see it this year with many of my student government students sitting right here. As they've planned a successful naturalization ceremony where 25 people have become American citizens. I've seen it as they planned a homecoming dance, a parade, and a pep rally. But it is students stepping up saying, I have this idea. It's something new, it's something unique. Can I try this? And it's me willing to support them and them really having that passion, as Maya had said, to step up and try something new.
One thing I'm really proud of that I've seen over the course of my career is while the director of Look Up to Cleveland, prior to this current role, we take the students out into different neighborhoods. So whether that's Collinwood, whether it's Slavic Village, it could be Clark Fulton. We put them in a position so they can assess what the community looks like. What are its assets? What are its opportunities? But also, what are its downfalls? What are its challenges? And because of this, I have many students who now see themselves as urban planners, something they didn't even know was a major, something they didn't even know was an occupation. And because of this, now that we have taken them out of their own bubble, which is sometimes Twinsburg, which is Beechwood, which is Orange, they can now see, how can I make my community better, but also how can I volunteer my time to actually give back to the anchor institutions in these neighborhoods to make sure I'm doing my part to make it better. Because those are neighborhoods that people don't really think about, that sometimes are often forgot. So I really appreciate over the course of the years the students who actually take the time to go back to those communities and say, hey, I may not live here and I'm not a resident, but I see the problems and I see the assets. I want to help create change for you and then take what they've learned and actually put it into action themselves. And because of that, they went on to college and changed their majors from something they thought they wanted to do to being an urban planner, to maybe being someone on the city council, their union council, their youth council, because they see the changes that need to be made. So I'm really proud of them.
And thank you, that was a great answer. But you talked a little bit about challenges, right? Challenges in identifying challenges specifically. Yeah. But what are some challenges that youth activists do face, especially with all the changes in government or, just being a high schooler?
Oh, that's the biggest challenge that I hear all the time is you're too young. Your voice is too small. So oftentimes they go overlooked and they think their ideas aren't big enough and adults don't take in what they're really saying to them. So the biggest challenge they have is actually feeling like their voice matters. And I'm here to tell you that it does, because you're the ones that can see the problems from a different perspective, right? And if it's only the adults who see what's going on, they'll actually get the ideas and the input from those who are younger and actually see what's going on in the community. That's the biggest challenge, is they feel as if just because they're a middle schooler or a junior in high school that their voice doesn't matter, and I have to constantly tell them, yes, it does. You have to push for what you want. All challenges can be overcome.
You were also talking about, when we were in the green room, we were talking about challenges, whether it's race or coming from a different socioeconomic status.
Yes.
Can you expand a little bit more on that so the students here can hear as well?
Yes, so I've worked with students from all backgrounds, like you said, whether that's from Orange County, from those who go to university school, private schools, to those who go to Collinwood, those who go to Cleveland Central Catholic. And one thing I really appreciate about the Look Up to Cleveland program was that we put all those students in the same room. And one thing that another challenge that they faced was the lack of resources that Cleveland Metropolitan School District has in comparison to other schools who are more affluent, right? So they get in these rooms, and instead of embracing those resources, they feel as if they're less than. And I have to continuously tell them, get out of the scarcity mindset. Yes, your school may lack this, but you're in the room with those students who don't. So this is your time to connect with them and really network, because they can offer you something that you may not have, and vice versa. So I really appreciate making sure that they connect on a relationship and have a solid foundation, because without that, they kind of just take that back and they just continue to look at what they lack instead of what can become.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Mr. Pichette, I'm going to backtrack a little bit,
Absolutely.
but when you talked about student government was student council a couple years back. What inspired that change, and how does student government specifically help raise the voices of our students?
Absolutely. It was the students that inspired that change. We were student council for forever. And 4 years ago now, we had a group of students that said we want to do more. Instead of just simply being student body president and class president, we want to actually do something with that title. And they came to me and said, we have a crazy idea. But what if we became student government? What if we divided ourselves into an executive branch, a legislative branch, added more opportunities for students to get involved, and actually created an opportunity for every student in the school to participate in different ways? They came to me and said, let's write a constitution and a bylaws. We hadn't had one. We spent months doing this, more time than I ever imagined I would as the advisor of now student government. But I was happy to, because I saw their passion, I saw their excitement, I saw their energy. They took it to a vote of the then student council, who unanimously said, let's move on, let's do this. We went to the Parent-Teacher Association, we said, hey, we want to provide more opportunity for students. It's going to be great, it's going to allow students to really take the lead on it. And now as student government, that is so true. Everything is student run. My role as an advisor is very minimal compared to what it once was. Any event that we do, it flows through our student body president, our council chair, our vice president, our director of finance. It flows through a lot of these students who have real roles that could then translate into the real world. It's not a title they just hold, it is them learning real responsibility to make sure they can understand, I can affect change, but it starts small, and it starts with that idea.
I'm a student who's part of your student government initiative, right? And you know this, but I was really quiet when I started. But how have you seen that change from student council to student government, and how our students are using their voices to make a bigger change throughout the community?
Well, it forces people to advocate for themselves and their ideas. You were a quite quiet student at one point, and you have really blossomed into this leader, somebody that I would recommend to any job, any college I could, because you have really become such a leader. And it is because you have to advocate for your ideas, what you think is right, what you want. And you're not just competing against other people's ideas, you're competing against really good ideas. And so you need to now find a way to thoughtfully navigate other people's ideas that may not always agree with yours, and make sure you're able to say, I think this is an idea that could win, I think this is the right idea, I think this is the right approach, and work together with other people to accomplish goals in mind. And I think that's a really important thing to take away from this, is it is all built on compromise and this ability to communicate and work with one another.
For sure. And Maya, I know we talked about Mr. Pichette using this influence throughout his school, but you also work in the community. So can you tell us more about how you do the same thing, but with students who may not be associated with a school?
Yes, so outside of my normal day-to-day, I'm also a mentor for 3 other different organizations, because I want to make sure that I am tapping into as many youth as possible, and not just the ones who are inside of my program. So my biggest thing is to make sure that I expose them to the different people, resources, organizations that they may not even know exist. And because of that, I think I have really done a good job of diversifying their visions and what they think Cleveland is, but also what they think they are. So I really try to take myself out of it and like lean into them, which is why I'm a big advocate for being a mentor to many students of different backgrounds, different economic statuses, or whoever think they can't do something. I want to make sure that I'm that person for them because I had that growing up, which is how I got into youth development. It's really essential that we put faces such as myself, such as Jonah, in front of people to say, hey, reach out to us. If you need help, if you have an idea, if there's anything you want to see or experience, and I have the capability and the access and the resource to provide that to you, I will do that. But I will need to know I need a base level. Right, so that's kind of where I come from when it comes to that outside of school, because I've never worked directly in a school as Jonah has, but I've touched many students who come from different schools, and I just make sure that I am that person that they need when they need.
Absolutely. And how can students measure how their youth activism is even making an impact?
I think it's personal. It's all subjective. Because success and impact looks different for everyone. So if you have a goal, even if it's something small and you've accomplished it, that's success. Just because you don't have like that title doesn't mean you aren't making an impact. Everyone has to start somewhere. So you have to decide what your success is for you to actually think like, hey, I did something. And if not, I'll be there to give it to you.
If I could piggyback on that, you don't need a title to be engaged or active. You don't need to be the student body president, or you don't need to be the on speech and debate, or you don't need to be the president of another club. You don't need that. You just need to have the passion, the ability to communicate, work with somebody else, have an idea and see it through. And you could measure that by setting that goal up in a smart format. Is it measurable? Is it achievable? Is it realistic? Can you do it in a time manageable environment? And so when we became student government from student council, we set a year-long timeline for ourselves. It wasn't something we planned overnight. I quite literally spent months with them writing at Constitution and bylaws. It took another couple months to ratify it all, to approve it. Those were just regular students. It wasn't anybody in leadership with a title. It was other students who had the idea. I work with plenty of students who aren't in any clubs who have crazy ideas. I have taken students on my commission, the environmental commission, outside of my work as a school. I work with them as they're interning for the city of Twinsburg. And I work with them on my commission for our Earth Day event, our Arbor Day event. And I say, hey, we're going to have an event, a bunch of kids are going to show up. I would love if you take a little bit of initiative here. I know you want to get involved. I know you want to plan an activity. Here's the parameters. What do you want to come up with? And they'll come up with this great idea. They're willing to take a step forward on it. And they accomplish so many fantastic things that really are the highlight of the event. And they blow my events out of the water, my activities out of the water.
And actually, I'm going to go right off of that.
Yeah.
But you being a teacher, how has that impacted the way that you help other students in the community advocate?
Yeah.
So I know you talked about with Twinsburg too.
Absolutely. So I think students are the future. It's not me. It's not any of the other adults in this room. It is really the students. You are the ones who are going to inherit everything in this world, everything in this country. You are the ones who need to have the ideas and be willing to do something with that. And so when I'm working with students, whether it's in my school, for my nonprofit, or my commission, I really encourage students to take their idea and do something with it. Far too often I am in meetings or groups or environments and people have great ideas. Adults have great ideas. And that's the end of the sentence. Yeah. You need to be able to do something with that idea. Be willing to say, I might not know what to do, but I think I know somebody who can. Work with somebody, collaborate with somebody to accomplish a tiny iota of that goal that you're now setting.
And Maya, on the contrary, you work with students that go to schools, but you're out in the community. Yeah. How do you see the school aspect of where they go or where they're from, and the people they're influenced from influencing the way they also see youth activism in the community?
Well, they take everything that I instill in them and then take it back to those schools, which is my favorite part because then they come back and let me know like, hey, because now I know how to start a club. Now I know what I need to do and I have an idea because of you. I know what my passion is. They take that and like they say, they make clubs and they make organizations behind what they're passionate about. One of them being like leukemia, find a cure for cancer, because we exposed her to like health services and resources that were available at the Greater Cleveland Food Bank Resource Resource Center. She was able to connect with other organizations and take that information back to her school to really make an impact. And now she's taking it on a larger level because now she's presenting at a conference this month, actually. She's presenting in a couple of weeks about this because of things that she learned from us, or just me just exposing her to these things. So that's what I really find passionate about working in the community, is you touch so many people and so many students, and it's not, I don't have to follow a curriculum. I really get to them, no offense on the curriculum, but I really take what they want and try to make it something bigger than themselves, so.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked so much about, you know, how students can get involved. And for you guys to both be on this panel, that's amazing because you guys are so accomplished. But how did you two start?
That's a loaded question. I started, like I said, I'm from Alabama, right? So when we moved here, when I was in middle school, my mother was really, she was really passionate about making sure that we didn't sit on the couch and watch TV every day. She had us in some form of sport and activity. So that's kind of how I started. I took and went back to those places. I grew up in Slavic Village, right? So that's Stella Wash Recreational Center. I made sure I started there and I continued to build those relationships. So once I got out of college, I made sure that I continued to build relationships with people who made a difference with me because they sent me to other people that they knew that could do more for me than they could. So I started out making sure that I was a part of programs as an adolescent, but making sure that I also went back and gave back to be a part of something bigger than myself. Because sometimes you just need to see that person and how they grew to where they are to say, hey, I could do that too.
Why is it so important to you?
It's so important because without it, especially without programs, without teachers like Jonah, kids kind of fall to the wayside and they become products of their environment, whether that's good or bad, and that looks different for everyone. And it's important that I try to instill certain values in them because I want better for them sometimes than people who are immediately around them every day. And it's not to say that it's a negative necessarily, but sometimes you need to get poured into from an outside water hose rather than someone that you know, because it's kind of a bias. So it's really important to me to make sure that they're living up to their full potential, because I will really hate to see the potential go to waste.
Absolutely. And Mr. Pichette?
You know, I was a quiet kid, much quieter than I am now. I really didn't believe I could make a change. I didn't really believe I could do much, which is antithetical to who I am now. It's complete opposite. But I was this quiet kid. I was a nice kid. I was able to build relationships with my teachers, my coaches, classmates. I did that, and I didn't realize that would ever become anything more than it once was. It wasn't until I got into the University of Akron, where I got my undergrad degrees, that I realized I could impact change. It started in student government there at the undergraduate level for me, and I won an election. And when I was there, I realized, wow, my idea, if I do something with that, you know, I can actually accomplish change. My idea was actually accessibility with residence hall doors. They weren't timed properly. A wheelchair user in my residence hall couldn't use the ADA door. I got that fixed. But it was an idea and something I worked towards. But that inspired me and made me realize that I could do this. I don't need to be somebody special. I don't need to be this crazy good orator who could speak really well. I don't need to come from you know, a family that has leaders everywhere. You know, although I have the hardest working father and mother, it's just they're not political leaders. You know, they're not politicians. They're not doing those things. But they inspired hard work ethics in me. And that's all it takes is hard work. And so since then, I've tried to get involved as much as I can and realize that the connections I build are the most important thing. The ability to work with coaches, teachers, other students, those could be leveraged and used to really impact positive change. It's part of the reason I spend most of my days on the phone. I'm trying to do so much good in my community, in my school, and everything I accomplish thereafter. And it's something that students could do. You know, the relationships with your friends, your coaches, your teachers, they're going to pay off. You have an idea in your school, you talk to a teacher, you say, I have an idea for a club. They're going to help you facilitate that success, right? I'm talking from my adult perspective here, but this started when I was a kid. I just didn't realize it. And that's the important thing to really understand here.
Yeah, for sure. And actually, I'm going to backtrack a little bit to the beginning of the forum when I was talking about rights and policies, right? Our environment has changed so much compared to when you guys were in high school, which wasn't long for either of you, and you're a proud teacher at the school that you actually taught at. But how have you seen the environment of youth activism change from when you were younger to where you are now? And Mr. Pichette, how have you seen it change in the students that you were once a student at?
I think it's really changed quite a bit. I now see students speaking out and up more for what they wish to occur, the changes they desire, the hopes they have, and the dreams they one day hope to see implemented. I can't say that it didn't exist when I was a student, not too long ago, but I very much see it more. There's a little sense of hope, and I think that sense of hope is really important, because that's all it takes is hope and an idea. The problem is that a lot of people have hope and a lot of people have ideas, and I see this with adults and I see this with students. You need a little bit more. You need the ability to say, I am going to be the person who takes that step. I happen to be really lucky that the groups I work with, they're filled with a lot of determined students who are going to be the ones to say, I could do this, I could take that step. But anybody could do that. Anybody could have that idea, take that step. And I think social media has been a really big help in that. It's not always the greatest thing in the world. I spend a little bit too much time on my phone sometimes, but it's a wonderful tool because it helps connect people with other people with the same great ideas. And you could use those, leverage those to further a cause, further an idea, further whatever it may be. And that is so important in my mind to really being an active youth. And compared to when I was younger, we didn't have an active social space like TikTok, Twitter, to really share those ideas.
Absolutely.
And that's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
I think now in today's day and age with technology and how much students are exposed to, it's kind of hard to ignore the issues that are going on, or to see like now they're more cognizant of like, oh, this needs to be changed, or this is right and this is wrong. And because of that, they're able to be more involved when it comes to our political climate. Like you say, start young. Yes, you can't vote until you're 18, but start with student government. Start with something that's local within your county, something that's local within your city before you go national. So I think because of social media, and like you said, it's not the best thing all the time, but it's really opening their eyes to all that's going on, especially today.
And if you guys could give one piece of advice to all the students in the room today, what would you say?
I can go.
Yeah, go ahead, because I have a few.
Okay. It's hard
I have a couple.
It's hard to pick one.
Yeah.
Again, civic involvement, being an engaged youth, it's going to look different from everybody. My advice, and I've said this time and time again, I feel like a broken record, but it really is just having an idea. And a lot of you, I imagine, are doing it, and you just don't realize it. Having an idea for a new club, wanting to change something in your school, in a classroom, even at home, you having a desire to change how your home is running. That is you instituting or trying to institute change. If you take that just a step further, advocate a little bit more, push for policy changes, you are doing everything that politicians are doing when they institute policy changes. You really are there. You are doing it. You just need to advocate for something and be the person that's willing to step up and say, I can do this. Because far too many people have the ideas and just end the sentence there. You need to be the one that believes in yourself and says, I can do this. Because you can. And it starts just so small. And then it grows from there as a snowball down a hill.
Okay, I picked one. I think my advice would be literally just start now. You're never too young. You're never too small. You're never too anything. If I could talk to my younger self, I would say, find a mentor now. Not everyone has those ideas. Not everyone is innovative, but you need people who are there to push you. So if you see someone who you look up to or someone that you admire what they're doing, ask if they can be your mentor, because they can expose you and help push you and put you in the right mind to get the ball rolling. So if you take anything away from the City Club today and from this room, find an adult, whether they're in college, whether they're in grad school, whether they're someone like me who is an early career professional, to actually connect with them so they can help you get to where you want to be.
Thank you so much, and thank you to our amazing panelists. We're going to move over to the mid-forum remarks now.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jonah Kuhar. I attend Strongsville High School as a senior, and I'm currently a member at City Club's Youth Forum Council. Today we have been enjoying a youth forum entitled Youth Activism, How Students Can Create Change, featuring Jonah Pichette, government educator and advisor at Brecksville Broadview Heights High School, and Maya Smith, director of early career programs at Cleveland Leadership Center. Moderating today's conversation has been Youth Forum Communications Council Vice President Shashini Mohan. We're about to begin Q&A. We welcome questions from everyone, city council members, students, educators, or those who are joining us via webcast. We ask that your questions please be brief, to the point, and end at a question mark. If you are joining us via webcast, we would like to ask a question or text at 330-541-5794. We will ask as time allows. At today's microphones are two Youth Forum Council members, Nathan and Nishatra. Can we please have our first question now?
My name is Kyle Williams. I'm a senior at MC Square STEM High School, and I wanted to know, how do you empower youth from lower income areas specifically that feel like their contribution isn't enough because their parents aren't rich or their parents don't have high status or something? And because there's a lot of people around the world that say that, oh yeah, your parents aren't politicians or they don't have any kind of status, so you can't help change the world in any way, shape, or form that you think. So I'm really interested to know how you think you can help youth, get into activism outside of whether their parents are rich or not.
Kyle, right? Hi. So I think the biggest thing I do, because I also came from that background, I don't have rich parents. They did well for themselves, but I was surrounded around students who were like that. So I think my biggest thing is I make sure that I go into those schools, into those neighborhoods. Like I said, I grew up in Civic Village. I grew up on Kinsman Avenue, and make sure I take them out of that environment and expose them to things. Like, you don't always have to have parents or people. You can start the change in your family. So just taking them out into the community, as well as anything that they want to experience, because they have ideas, right? They see things. Tell me what you want to see, and if I have the resources, like I said, I will expose you to it, because you don't have to be a product of your environment. You can always be something bigger than yourself. So that's just something I do, and they always find it influential, and they really appreciate it at the end. Like, hey, thank you for opening my eyes, and now I know I can do something. I don't have to have this illustrious background.
If I could add on, my parents are not on city council. They're not on the school board, but they're the hardest working people I know. They work in the medical field and the auto working industry. Hardest working people I know. And really all it takes, whether you live in a lower income area, whether you're in the most affluent area in this country, you can have an idea. You just need to be able to work hard to fulfill that idea, to set a smart goal and be willing to achieve it. It doesn't really matter if you have rich parents that are politicians, as you mentioned. It doesn't matter. You need to have the idea and the drive inside yourself to follow through. Some of the most successful people in this room and in this world are those that had to struggle a little bit, but had the drive to say, I could do this. Money, status, it doesn't buy you everything. It takes that internal drive. And everybody in this room, all of these students here, I know you have it, because you were sitting here on a Wednesday at a youth forum, and that is not something everybody else is doing.
Hi, my name is Merle Johnson. I taught 40 years in the Cleveland School District, and I'm very concerned about the kind of legislation that's coming out of our legislature. Bills that are being introduced that are censorship bills that don't allow teachers to teach the truth about history. And right now, Senate Bill 113 would ban diversity, equity, and inclusion in all of our K-12 schools in the state of Ohio. That means no girls' clubs, probably no African American literature, probably no LGBTQ clubs. So my question is, it's important for the students to step outside their schools and look at what's happening at the state level. That's why I use a website called Honesty for Ohio Education, where you can find out about it. My question to you is, do your students do any kind of advocacy for public education, for truth in history? Do they do anything to fight this harmful legislation that's being introduced?
Well, they have in prior years, but like you said, like this is more current. So nothing has been impacted yet. but they're in the process of thinking about ways how they can continue to make sure that that doesn't, like they aren't censored, and that they have clubs and they convene as one outside of what's taught at schools. So while they're still in the process, they don't have anything tangible yet that has went into impact, but they do fight for it because at the end of the day, it's gonna affect them the most, especially those who come from those backgrounds where it's gonna impact their knowledge and education. So we're actively working on it. I can't give you the end result yet, but I'm hoping I'll be able to soon.
And I appreciated that question. I'm a government teacher, and so I teach the State of Ohio Learning Standards, which allows students to really understand on the government side of my classroom what they can do, how the structures, functions work. What that means is students, after they leave my class, they are able to understand how they could advocate, how they could reach out to the General Assembly and say, whatever their opinion may be, I appreciate or I don't appreciate the legislation. And I have had students who have come to me and say, Mr. Pichette, I'm not quite sure how to find this on the State General Assembly website. Can you show me? And I'm more than happy to show them that so that they can advocate for themselves. It's not my job to tell a student how to think. It's my job to teach them how to find the information, to teach them the structures and functions of government. But I really appreciate when students are able to make their informed decisions and then advocate for their informed selves.
Hi, I'm from Solon High School. I'm just wondering, how do you find networking events or opportunities to meet people like mentors that are potentially influential in the activism that you're partaking in?
You might be a better person to answer that to start out.
Yes, so there's so many organizations that you all can get involved with, whether that's CLC, Cleveland Leadership Center, Engage Cleveland. There's just checking out LinkedIn. There's the City Club, obviously, because you're here today. They're everywhere. You just, like Jonah said, have to do your own research, but there's so many organizations that are out there that can help you find mentors or at least place you Junior Achievement, the Social Impact Academy. There's a number of organizations. You just have to research it yourself to figure out who is out there. And if they can't make a direct impact, then I'm always available, and I can help you make that impact yourself.
I started a little late in my networking. Again, I was the quiet high school student, but I started when I was in college and have continued on. But I just showed up to events, something that piqued my interest. It was on my undergraduate's newsletter. I showed up, and I started to talk to people. Hi, I'm Jonah. Nice to meet you. What's your name? Very basic stuff. And over time, I'd keep seeing the same people at the same events. I'd get to know them a little bit more. They'd get to know me. We'd exchange contact information, Snapchat, phone numbers, what have you. But that would now carry on to after I graduated. They'd be working a job. I'd need something from them. They'd call me. Postgraduate life, as I'm living my world and in my world, I started showing up to city council meetings, to some council fundraisers, to different events where I knew people would be, things that piqued my interest. People saw me, they got to know me. I got to know them. I have a question, they have a question, they'll call me, I could call them. My nonprofit I started this year, this charitable foundation, the entire board is built on people I've met over the past 3 years, just at events. And I've gotten to trust, and they've gotten to trust me because I've simply just been in the same place at the same time again and again and again. I think just showing up, being present is really important for how I've networked.
Yeah, and if I could piggyback off that, I know a lot of students are shy, introverted, and they don't like to go places by themselves. Everyone has a yapper friend, an extroverted friend. I'm usually that friend. Take them with you. If you tell them what you want to accomplish, they're going to force you to do that. So if you're scared to go to an event by yourself, ask a friend. You guys can go together, and then they can kind of push you and hold you accountable for what you said that you were going to do. So we're people we get our energy from meeting people. If that's not you, grab a friend, because I don't want you to think because you're shy and you're reserved that you aren't going to get what you need out of that event. Always take a friend. That's my biggest advice. Do not go anywhere by yourself if you feel like you're not going to get out of it what you plan to get out of it when you went.
Is it possible to build your own community outside of school, with a group of friends per se?
Absolutely. You're in charge of who you're around. You're in charge of who your community is. That's why I push students to connect with other students outside of their own school, because if you don't, you kind of get siloed, right? You make your own community. You get out of things what you put into them. So my biggest advice, outside of all the other advice I give you, surround yourself with people who you want to see do better, but also want you to see do better. You are your community. So yeah, absolutely. If you can and you have the opportunity to, make your community who you want it to be made up of. It's your ecosystem. It's your life.
I couldn't have said that any better.
And I, as a student, I just want to put my 2 cents in there. But being someone who's on the Youth Forum Council, we have a whole community of friends, people that we know from outside of school, and we're all driving towards the same change. Yeah. So if you want to be a member of the Youth Forum Council, this is definitely a place to start, because we're all friends here, we know each other, but we go to completely different schools. And I think it's a great way to get started outside the community as well.
Yeah.
My question is, if we do something to help our community or another community, will that help us with our passion for the future, like who we want to be?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It used to, like Jonah had said, like starting small with that idea, it kind of just snowballs after a while. So once you start where you are now, I think your future just continues to be brighter and brighter. That's kind of how I started. I don't want to get too personal, but I think, yes, you're absolutely correct. It can make your future a lot brighter because you get out of it what you put into it. So if you start now, but that doesn't mean if you don't start now, you can't. Like Jonah said, he started late. Starting is starting, right? That's better than not starting at all.
Yeah, again, couldn't have said that any better.
I'm so sorry.
You are all good. You're just too good at this.
Hi, my name is Sophie. I'm a senior at Aurora High School. We often experience setbacks when trying new things and brainstorming new ideas, and for some people, those setbacks can be enough to stop them from continuing that idea. How would you go about helping a person who experiences multiple setbacks and begin to lose hope in the process of trying to make a difference?
That's hard. I've faced a lot of setbacks in life. I'm sure Maya has. I'm sure everybody in this room has. Setbacks are not fun. They're really hard to deal with. But when you're trying to navigate getting through those, I think you have to think back to your purpose. What was the original intent of the idea or the activity you tried? Why? Why were you doing it? What made you try that new thing? What made you try that activity? Is that why still there? Does that still exist? And if so, you can't let that flame die. That's part of that drive I mentioned earlier. You need to have that internal drive and be willing to say, it stinks a little bit right now, but I'm willing to push through the suck just a little bit more. I'm somebody who believes some of the greatest things in life are on the other side of discomfort. Obviously, you have to be safe and you have to do smart things, but on the other side of discomfort. And so I've pushed my boundaries. I was that quiet kid, and I started talking to more people and getting out, and I hit a lot of walls because I was like, I don't feel comfortable. I don't know if I could be this extrovert person. And over time, I've just changed in who I am. And that's helped me become a different, better person, in my opinion.
Absolutely. One of my colleagues always uses the phrase fail forward. And I think that's something that students should really take on as their mantra. Because if you don't fail does not mean final. Just because you failed at something does not mean you can't go back to the drawing board and see what mistakes you made and then make the necessary changes to succeed later. So I always will say, just because you had a setback does not mean you took a step back, you could take 10 steps forward. Don't give up. Giving up doesn't do anything but leave you where you started. And if you're trying to make progress and if you stop, that doesn't help anybody. So I always say, just keep trying. Risk is reward, in my opinion.
Hello, my name is Stephanie Kent. I'm a freshman at Cleveland Remote High School, and my question is, in moments of widespread public anger or frustration, how do you as an advocate lead people towards constructive action instead of destructive emotion?
That's a deep one. I always think, for me personally, someone has to have the level head, right? So I try to be that person, because if you create destruction, you necessarily won't get change out of that. Peaceful protest, I'm more so MLK and not Malcolm X. So you have to rally the people together to let them know, like, you have to create change, but you have to make sure that no one gets hurt in the process, one, because just because you think that that's going to help, sometimes that hinders. So it's just making sure you always stay the professional in any situation, in my current role, I would say, but making sure that you just make sure that everyone stays level-headed, because you don't want to cause any more disruption than there already is. I'm not saying that it's unwarranted, but
I think emotions are a positive thing. You know, sometimes the emotions themselves might not be positive, but emotions are a positive thing.
Yeah.
They help you decide what you're really feeling. They help drive change generationally and just for a community as a small sect. But you can't let the emotions drive your actions. You must think back to your why. Why do you have that emotion? Why are you so passionate about that issue? What is your why? You take that moment to take that deep breath. You are allowed to feel the emotion. I'm not saying you can't have that emotion, you're not allowed to feel it, but what is the why? How can you take that why and be productive with it? How could you turn that into a SMART goal where you create change? Because again, if you just have the emotion, all you have is an idea and you're ending the sentence. It's important you do more than just end the sentence. You need to take that idea and do something with it. And being angry or being upset, to your question's point, it's okay to be angry, but if you're just angry, then you're just angry. If you're angry and you have an idea, how do you make that idea come to life? And I think that's the important part that a lot of people tend to forget or just overlook. Everybody in this room has the power to affect change. You starting small and growing that and snowballing that into something bigger. Every one of you has that power.
yeah, emotional intelligence is key when you're in those moments.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Stephanie.
Hi, my name's Madeline Kramer, and I'm a junior at Aurora High School, and I've taken a lot of time reflecting on the past of youth activism, and I just wanted to ask, where you guys hope to see youth activism going on for the next 5 to 10 years?
I just hope it continues. I have seen so much growth in my past 5 years teaching, where students have begun to advocate more and more for changes they desire in their school, in their classrooms, in their communities. You know, I think that is a fantastic opportunity for students to really understand they can be the change they wish to see. And I hope it continues. It is far different than it was when I was growing up. I'm sure that that's the same instance for many in this room. I think social media has played a large help and hindrance or influence in that, and I'm hoping it just continues.
Yeah, I agree with everything Jonas said. I just hope that it continues to expand and that the voices, the small voices, continue to get bigger and to get out there to make sure that they're having an impact on what's going on in our community today. So,
my name is Raina. I'm a junior at Hawken Upper School, and my question is, what's one issue you wish your students felt more driven to take action on?
That is so hard for me to answer, and I'll say why. Because my job as an educator, my job as an advisor is to feel passionate and help facilitate the student's passion. It's not my job to dictate or tell a student what they need to be passionate about. It's my job to help them fulfill their passions. But to your point, to almost answer the question, because I don't think I can entirely, I would love students to be more passionate about seeing their ideas through. To say, I have this idea, I would like to see it accomplished. Earlier in this forum, I talked about the drive-in movie theater, how a student had that idea and made it happen. Those ideas are crazy. If you walk to most teachers and said, I want to have a drive-in movie theater at our school, that's insane. But to have an idea that insane and make it happen, I think that's really important, and I would be happy to support those passions.
I think he's in my head, because I was going to say the same thing. I think it's better for the students to tell us and not for me to tell the student what they should be passionate about, because I don't want to put my beliefs and my values on them. So it's easier to do the reverse, and I make sure that I'm driving home and I'm supporting whatever they're passionate about or whatever issue that they feel needs to be changed. Kids are really impressionable students, so I really try to make sure that whatever I believe is my belief, and I make sure that's known, and I let them tell me where they need help, because I don't want to put the wrong influence on them, and then now they're in something that they essentially never really cared about, honestly.
I am Joseph Gura from Gerson Schools, and my question was, how am I able to start something and make it like a big thing, even though there's like a limited amount of people that I'm able to talk to about it?
I think like ambition and the big picture is important, but I don't think you should strive for that. Everything takes time and everything is a journey, not a destination. And if you're focusing on like the big picture, you kind of miss those steps in between. So just because you have something small, it will get there. I think you just have to, like Jonah always says, like stick with your idea, and then it will get to where you think it should be, and then it will continue to grow. So don't get lost in the I want it to be here. Just make sure you're staying the course along the way.
Following that journey is so important. This past year, I worked with a student. She was on her senior internship, actually from Aurora in the city of Twinsburg. And she was working with our school, and we had another student also working with the city of Twinsburg on his internship. And he was talking to me, he said, my goal is to be elected politician one day. I said, that's fantastic. But let's talk about the journey, to Maya's point. You know, you're not gonna one day just wake up and congrats, you're a senator. It's not gonna happen that way.
Exactly.
You need to be able to scale that. Start small. Start with realistic goals.
Yep.
Because it is achievable. You could be the senator for the state of Ohio, but you need to start with realistic, achievable goals and scale that upwards. And so I helped connect him with the mayor, some of the council members, brought him out to lunch, had a great conversation, and they explained how they got started, how he could then go from there to sort of the next office where he wanted to go, and help to explain that it is a journey. It's not just the destination, to Maya's point.
Hello, my name is Charles Chattel. I'm a senior at Brexville Broadview Heights High School. And my question is, in a time where we are more connected than ever due to digital mediums, how can we overcome our growing disconnect as people, especially through the lens of youth who are so conditioned to interact through social media apps?
This is a fantastic question. I think part of it is just you are going to have to be willing to sometimes set the phone down. Social media is a great tool. I've mentioned it. We've all mentioned that. It also is a hindrance to that success, to that collaboration, to doing what you want to do. You sometimes, when you're in a room with other people, with others that you might want to connect with, network with, you need to be willing to set the phone down. When I am in a room with people that I'd like to network with, my phone is not in my pocket. It's not in my pocket now. This is an important place for me to be. And so I want to make sure I give my full undivided attention, and sometimes it's hard. I know the phone's ringing, I know I'm getting notifications from Twitter or Instagram or what have you, but you need to be willing to just take your drive and say, I'm gonna put that aside, I'm gonna put the notifications aside and focus on what's really important, that's connecting here with people.
Yeah, and I know you, like you say, you are influenced to connect in those digital mediums, but it's okay to start there, but don't let it end there. So start in that connection and then move from the phone. Set up a lunch, coffee, Chipotle, whatever it is. Don't always feel like you have to use your phone as that like cord that's connecting you between someone else. But like you said, it is a great tool to have, but making sure, what I like to say is like to be where your feet are. Put the phone down. Yes, you could connect with whomever you're having the lunch with, but it's okay to set the phone aside and to really take in the moment and where you are, because you can miss so much by trying to pay attention to an Instagram notification, or that's going to be there and they can wait. Really take in where you're at currently, and to just be where you are in the moment.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, I'm Dottie Grigsby, Open Doors Academy. First of all, thank you for helping to shape our future leaders. Your work is appreciated. My question is, have you developed, or do you plan to develop, a toolkit or guidebook of sorts that emphasizes the best practices, that we can share with our scholars and families?
I have never thought about that. That's a great idea. No, I can't say that I have, but now that you put it in my head, I think I should put together a toolkit, because that's something that we're losing. We're losing as we continue to progress in our careers. So thank you for that idea. I think I should work on a toolkit, because it will be essential for not only the students I work with, but students who are just all over the community. So thank you for that idea. I'm going to take it and run with it. I'll credit you.
I have nothing else to add because I've also not thought of a toolkit or a guidebook, but it's an interesting idea, especially as an educator or my work on the commission. I think it's an interesting idea and something I'd like to consider.
Yeah. Maybe we collaborate on that.
We could. That'd be a fantastic idea.
We'll connect later.
Hello, my name is Charlie Marr, and I go to university school, and I'm a junior. How do you believe kind of social media really plays into this idea of social activism, and how do you make your idea heard across the millions of posts every day?
So I don't think it's going to be heard across millions of people's ears right away. I think you have to start small, and I think your social media following might just be your school community. It might be a little larger. That is your community to start. And if you have an idea and you're showing that it's worth following, others will follow. If you build it, they will come. And so if you're sharing these ideas, these passions, and people could see that passion and those ideas, I think it will naturally grow over time. But again, you're not going to have 1 million followers overnight that just love your idea.
Yeah.
You're going to have resistance and opposition, and that's just the natural part of being a human.
Yeah.
It is who we are. But if you care about your idea, if you're working towards it, I think eventually it will grow. And as it grows, and as people see your passion, see your idea, more will follow, and it will spread.
Hi, my name is Raya Rashid. I go to Aurora High School, and my question is, how do we promote self-advocacy in childhood, especially those from lower socioeconomic backgrounds?
Do you want to take this one?
No, I'm thinking. It's
Okay.
it's so many things I could say, so I'm going to process.
So to promote social advocacy, especially for those from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, I think, again, it just starts with building a connection. You need to be able and willing to connect with anybody and everybody. Nobody is off limits because everybody can and will and does have a good idea. Again, you just need to have somebody with a passion and the ability to work hard. I never discount anybody I meet. When I meet hundreds of people a day, whether it be in the school or my community, I am always out and talking with people at my gym, at just events. I meet so many new people. I never discount anybody because that can be somebody who has a great idea that I want to see through and I want to help them because they inspire me to the last person's question. And so you can just never discount anybody. You have to be willing to take everybody at face value for the person they are.
And I'm going to say, like, you said self-advocacy, right? Like, you're your biggest advocate. So no leader has ever done anything on their own. So I don't want to say self-advocacy, but to take your idea and make sure you're collaborating across all boards, across all mediums, across all, like, demographics, because they can really help you get to where you want to grow, to where you want to go. So making sure that you advocate for yourself and the ideas that you have is really important. Oh.
Thank you all for joining us at the City Club of Cleveland for Youth Activism, How Students Can Create Change. My name is Amia Bindra, a junior at Brexville Broadview Heights High School. Thank you again to our panelists, Jonah Panchette and Maya Smith, for taking time out of your busy schedules to be with us today. I would also like to recognize all of the schools that we have represented in the room. Aurora High School, Collinwood High School, Cleveland Heights/University Heights High School, MC Squirt STEM High School, East Tech High School, Brexville Broadview Heights High School, William Rainey Harper School, and the Gerson School. Additionally, we would like to acknowledge Open Doors Academy for being present at today's forum. The Youth Forum Council would also like to extend a tremendous thank you to our sponsors, Nordson, the George W. Cordrington Charitable Foundation, AT&T, Martha Holden Jennings Foundation, the Doris C. Michael Ski Trust, and for your continued support. If you enjoyed today's forum, we hope to see you for our next month for our forum on November 12th. For any educators in the room or listening to today's forum, if you are interested in bringing your student to any future forums, please email Youth Forum Counsel Ariana Smith at cityclub.org. That brings us to the end of today's forum. Thank you to our incredible panelists, student attendees, and City Club guests. The forum is now adjourned.
For information on upcoming speakers or for podcasts of the City Club, go to cityclub.org.
The ideas expressed in City Club forums are those of the speakers and not of the City Club of Cleveland, IdeaStream Public Media, or their sponsors. Production and distribution of City Club forums on IdeaStream Public Media are made possible by PNC and the United Black Fund of Greater Cleveland Incorporated.